It was July 18th, 1969. It was early in the morning, about 5:30 a.m. It was a beautiful day to fly. No wind to speak of, so how could it be better? We start up the engines. We were full of fuel. Everything was fine, and we started taxiing. And then, sure enough, the aircraft started to climb. Chuck brought the landing gear up. We were accelerating and climbing above the runway, and I think we were about 100 feet above the ground when I started noticing that something was wrong. You have one engine at high RPM, another at low RPM. Now that can happen with an engine failure. And I mean, I grabbed the chairs and held on and looked out, and I saw a bunch of green grass. It looked like a city park. And I thought, well, worst case scenario, we've always been trained to just land in a park. But the next thing I noticed was towering trees were filling our windshield. Chuck grabs the flight controls and he yanks them all the way left, as far as they'll go, and then he pulls it all the way back against his chest. I suddenly found myself above the crash site, but unaware of what I was looking at or why. I was not in any pain. I was not in any fear or discomfort. I was just above this crash site. I could see an airplane and I could see a pilot. First of all, my eyes went right to one pilot. This was Gene. And then I went over and I saw another pilot right next to him, 5 feet away. And I recognized this as Chuck. And while I'm processing what I'm looking at, I see a third pilot, also about 5 feet away. And this is me.
Imagine if what we're living here on this earth is really being lived on a flat black and white painting on a wall. And death is separation. So when we die, our spirit separates from our physical body. You die and you're ripped off that flat black and white two-dimensional painting and you're brought out into a three-dimensional room of color all around you. You're experiencing things you've never experienced before, even though you can see your world is contained within this world. Then imagine you're put back into that flat black and white painting and you have to describe 3 dimensions of color in 2-dimensional black and white terms. How would you do it?
Medically, scientifically, the point of death cannot be defined. What we do know is there is a process of dying during which I feel the near-death experience occurs. 75% of the people in that first study had had a documented cardiac arrest. Part of the experience is they said they floated up out of their body and they could see what was going on during the resuscitation. I felt that myself as a cardiologist could pick that apart.
That's when everything went dark. just felt like I was fainting at the beginning. And then it's like pulling the curtain or snapping a light or something. Somewhere around that point, I saw me, I was still on the floor, and I recognized myself down there, kind of curled over in a half-fetal position.
And when you saw your body, did you look at your body close? Did you see your face?
I could see my right ear and this side of my face because I was laying facing away.
How did you feel when you were in that state?
Pretty buoyant. Felt, up. Here's something going on that nobody else in the world knows about.
Have you told a lot of people about your experience?
You're the only person.
What?
The second printing.
This is clinical death as we know it. Sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes hours. And yet modern medicine, or the miraculous, I don't know, resuscitated them, and they were able to come back and talk about it.
You may think you've died. All definitions, medically, scientifically, and legally, state that once you go across that red line, i.e. you die, you don't come back. And I like to say, doctors resuscitate, not resurrect their patients.
I was actually an agnostic. I didn't know if I believed there was a God. I don't know if I believe there's a heaven or not, but my dad was dying of cancer. And someone gave him the very first research on what's now called near-death experiences. And I saw it on his nightstand, picked it up and read it in one night, and that just got me curious. So it kind of opened my eyes, my mind, and I started to explore from there. I found it fascinating, kind of the train of how this whole near-death experience phenomena started to get traction in America. Dr. George Ritchie was the first one to really talk publicly about this. He was actually at Camp Barclay getting ready to go fight in World War II.
What happened during those 9 minutes? Who did you see? What happened?
I met the Christ because I was told to stand up. You're in the presence of the Son of God. He came into my room, and he conducted me through 4 different realms of life after death. That life really is forever. We don't die. Death is nothing more than just a gateway through which we go.
Dr. Moody actually heard him lecture at the University of Virginia, where he was a visiting professor, and heard him talk about this near-death experience.
In 1969, I became a professor of philosophy at East Carolina University. And in teaching courses on Plato, I began to hear these experiences from my students and also from other faculty members.
I was brought into this field kicking and screaming. I was at the University of Florida in Gainesville with Sarah Kreitzinger, who was a psychiatric social worker at the hospital I was working at. She had picked up Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, about 2 months after it was initially published. She read it, she gave it to me, she asked me what I thought.
This is Dr. Raymond Moody, noted psychiatrist, lecturer, and researcher. He is perhaps best known as the author of the groundbreaking examination of the near-death experience, the best-selling book, Life After Life. It has sold upwards of 15 million copies and has been printed in 14 different languages.
They tell us, first of all, that they seem, from their point of view, to leave their physical bodies, to float up above the scene of the resuscitation and to watch the events going on down below. They tell us that they go through a narrow passageway or a tunnel into an incredibly brilliant and warm and loving light.
Hogwash. I'd never heard these experiences before. I went into the hospital asking some of the older physicians, hey, you ever heard a patient say this? No. So I was very skeptical that these things were even occurring, and if they were occurring, they were either hallucinations or delusions or whatever. In cardiology, we're about scientific studies. So I asked a few people who had been resuscitated, And the third patient I talked to had an experience similar to what Moody talked about in his book, Life After Life. So Sarah and I said, well, maybe we ought to look into this further. We devised a scientific protocol to interview these people. We tape recorded the interviews. We took down their background data, their demographics, et cetera. And this went on for 5 years. First of all, I'd get permission to tape record it and then say, okay, go. Tell me what happened.
2 or 3 people lifted me and put me up on a dolly, all metal, 4-legged metal. When they first threw me up on the table, he struck me. They shoved a plastic tube like that you put in an oil can. They shoved that in my mouth. It was at that point I noticed another table-like arrangement with a bunch of stuff on it. I know it later, it's the machine that they thump you with. They were coming toward, they were moving on me, is what it was.
When you were up looking down on your body, did you see details?
Yeah, I could see a whole lot of details, like blood spots on the wall, but it was splattering on the wall, and then they had washed it up.
These people say, I've never told anybody about this, Doc, and by the way, I'm the only one that's ever had this. So the near-death experience at that time, and that's about 45 years ago, was not well known. And so these people were sort of coming up with it on their own, and they were suspicious of me asking the questions, which to me lent credibility to what they were telling me.
Many of them said, for example, that they'd tried to tell their doctor about it or a minister about it, and that they were dismissed. And in those initial years, the people that I talked with were just very happy that at last somebody would listen to them.
I started at Northern Kentucky University in 1972. I was hired as an assistant professor, and I was offered a promotion to full professor at the age of 25. And I was also given tenure my third year. 7 students, myself and my wife, toured Amsterdam and then went up to Denmark, spent a few days there, went to Sweden for a day, and last week, it was a 3-week trip, and our last week was a week in Paris. It was an art tour, and it was pretty much all museums. On that Saturday morning, June 1st, 1985, I had the most acute pain I'd ever experienced in my life in the center of my abdomen, right there. It was terrifying because it just came from nowhere, and I never experienced such acute pain. I mean, this is like the kind of pain that blows the top of your head off. A doctor came very quickly, got me up off the floor with a great deal of difficulty because I couldn't move. He knew exactly what was wrong and told me that I had a perforation of the duodenum, which means I had a hole go through my small stomach. What was happening was the hydrochloric acid and the enzymes and the bacteria and everything are now migrating, leaking into my abdominal cavity. To put it in crude terms, I was digesting myself on the inside. Without exaggeration, what it felt like was fire. My wife riding alongside of me in the back, and as we traveled 70, 80 miles an hour through the streets of Paris to the big city hospital. They confirmed basically if I didn't have the surgery in an hour, I would die. So they sent me to the surgical hospital, and because it was the weekend, there was no doctor available, no surgeon available at the hospital they sent me to. So I was put in a room. I begged, I screamed, I yelled. And my wife begged and yelled and screamed.
Nurse, can someone please come in here?
Sorry, we need a doctor to prescribe something. there I was for 10 hours. About once an hour, the nurse would come in and ask how I was doing, and I would tell her in French and in English that I was dying, and shrug their shoulders and walk away. I wasn't in fear, I was in terror, because I was 38 years old, very successful in my career at the university, you know, wife and 2 kids, nice house, 2 cars. The thing that kept going through my mind is, this can't be happening, this can't be happening, this can't be happening. People ask me, how do you know you were dying? It's like the stupidest question in the world. When you're dying, you know it. With every breath. I felt like I had one more breath to go. The nurse came into the room at 8:30 that night and said they were sorry, but they were unable to locate a doctor, and they would try to find one the next day, which was Sunday. Well, when she said that, I was like, okay, it's over, it's done. You know, I can't do this anymore. You know, I'm exhausted. And I looked at her, and it was horrible to see her crying like that. And I closed my eyes and stopped trying to breathe, and I went unconscious. I was an atheist, and I knew that when you die, it's just over. It's like the big nothing, you know, void, the end.
The official impact speed recorded by the National Transportation Safety Board was 135 miles an hour. We impacted right below the cockpit. With that impact speed, it just exploded the cockpit into, everything was opened up. We hit that dome and fell, boom, right down to the ground. I'm told by the curator of the mausoleum that the mausoleum is 6 stories, 7 stories tall, and we slammed right into the top of it. I can remember today as well as I could 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You realize that you are not a body. I believe it's what happens to everyone when they die.
I awoke from unconsciousness, standing there next to the bed, feeling better than I'd ever felt before in my life. My vision was greatly increased. Instead of seeing 160 degrees, I could see almost 360 degrees. My depth of field was total. When I looked at something close, everything far was in focus. Being an artist and being a visual person, that was the first thing. It's like, wow. I've never been able to see like this. Then I realized that I could hear, smell, taste, touch, everything. I could feel all the little nuances in the cold linoleum floor. I could hear the buzzing of the fluorescent lights in the ceiling really loudly. All of my senses were greatly, greatly enhanced.
I'm looking down and I'm realizing there's my body, but I'm up here. I can't be dead, because I've never felt more alive. I was not only alive, I was free. And I didn't understand this, but I realized then, okay, I am a spirit. I have a soul, and I used to live in that body. I was pressed up against the instrument panel and was motionless. It was 16 minutes before the fire department got there. The paramedics got there right after. They put me and Chuck in the same ambulance, and I have tremendous, strong memories that I'm watching my body and Chuck, and I'm chasing that ambulance as it goes through the streets. I have no idea how to explain a lot of the things we're talking about, but chasing that ambulance without really any effort, how did I do that? I don't know. I wasn't worried. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't concerned, really. I was questioning, what is this all about?
Now, while no two near-death experiences are the same, they have a very consistent pattern of elements, or what occurs during the near-death experience, that typically occur in a very consistent process. The very first thing that happens is that close brush with death. They're unconscious, they may be clinically dead with absent heartbeat, absent breathing. At that time, when they shouldn't have any experience at all, they do. Often the first thing that happens is what's called an out-of-body experience.
People leave their bodies, they're watching the resuscitation many times, but they say they still have a spiritual body.
From that vantage point, they can see ongoing earthly events and often later describe frantic efforts at their own resuscitation.
They move out of that place of their resuscitation and they come to a place of exquisite beauty.
They very commonly see a light at times, interpret that as a religious figure.
And this light was light that is love and life. It was palpable and not hard to look at, but it came out of everything. And yet it made everything vibrant. The colors, they say, are far beyond our color spectrum.
Music has been described so beautiful that they say they've never heard anything like it, and nothing like that's possible on Earth.
Deceased relatives or friends often come to meet them there.
You know, they say we still have all our memories, our humor. We're the same people, but we meet again on the other side.
Some of them say, well, I reached a place where I felt like if I went any further, I wouldn't come back.
At that time, they may then have a life review. They may see part or all of their prior life.
The whole experience is very calm. It's very peaceful. Some people don't want to come back.
And then many talk about a God of light and love that they experience in His presence. This light is brighter than the sun, but again, not just light like we would see here on earth. And they feel an unconditional love and peace and acceptance from this God like they've never experienced before.
Ultimately, they either make the choice to return to their earthly body or are sent back involuntarily.
This God almost always says to them, your time is not up yet. You still have a purpose on earth. Sometimes He asks them, do you want to stay or do you want to go? Many times He says, you got to go back. None of them want to go back. Not every single one of them experiences all the commonalities. Some do. Some experience 3, 4, 5, some 10, 20, some all of them. But those commonalities overlap. But there are uniquenesses to each experience. Like when they encounter this God of light and love, each one of them feels like they are the only one God loves. And yet they all feel that way. You know, actually, these near-death experiences are not new. Plato wrote in the Republic about a soldier who comes to on his funeral pyre and had an experience like this. Paul in the New Testament, who wrote much of the New Testament, I believe in Acts chapter 14, he's stoned to death in Lystra and left for dead, and then he gets back up. And he talks about how he had an experience of going to heaven.
In the ancient world, presumably these experiences were very rare. By the time I started investigating it in the 60s and 70s, the advent of cardiopulmonary resuscitation had greatly increased the number of people who had been to the brink of death and recovered. So there were a lot of cases.
Some of them say, well, I reached a place where I felt like if I went any further, I wouldn't come back. And I get questioned about this a lot. And the question is, well, is that really a barrier or not? And my answer is, well, I've not been able to interview any of them that didn't come back. So I assume that if they do go over that, it very well may be a point of no return. I have no evidence to suggest that, except I have no evidence to refute it either. Raymond Moody heard about our work, so he called us up to his house along with 2 other researchers.
And that's when I met all of these wonderful people, Bruce Grayson and Mike Sabom and Kenneth Ring.
We got together, we compared notes, and we said, you know, we ought to form a group and share with one another what we're doing. And it eventually turned out to be what's now known as IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies.
After 5 years of doing research, Dr. Sabom ends up writing a book, convinced that this really does show that there is life after death. But then even more fascinating, he publishes in the Journal of the American Medical Association his findings and what changed his mind.
I was in my residency training and I was going through a bound journal looking for a cancer-related article, and completely by accident I found in the title of an article the term near-death experience. Everything I knew as a doctor said, this is medically inexplicable. In this article, all around the world were people having these experiences while they were unconscious, even clinically dead. Who can't be mystified by that question of what happens after you die?
As I've traveled around the world to China and Japan and India and North and South America and all over Europe, people all over the world use the word light, but they say that it's not the light that comes from a light bulb or from the sun, but universally the description is of a light of complete compassion and love. And people also say that they learned from their experience that what we call death is a transition into some other reality. So they lose their fear of death.
The day was January 18th, 1989. Very chilly by South Texas standards. I almost stopped in a little town before you cross all the bridges to get some coffee. I didn't. The people who were on the highway ahead of me, she wanted some coffee. They pulled over, I drove past them, and they came in behind me, Dick and Anita on a wrecker.
It was foggy and a slight rain. It was wet.
And I knew I would have to cross some bridges. It was an old bridge, and it is very narrow. I'm just really focused on getting back to Alvin, Texas, where I live. I was headed back that way and looking forward to seeing my family, which I missed for 3 days, especially my wife. What I didn't know was that steep embankment was there. It's like going on a tunnel, because you have this big metal superstructure above you, on both sides of you. You can see only really to the end of the bridge, and then the highway goes up. So I couldn't see beyond the end of the bridge. Out of nowhere, a tractor-trailer truck hit the car in his lane, and then came over into my lane and hit me head on.
When we approached the bridge, the first thing on the right was this large 18-wheeler. And then the next thing on the left, I believe was a gray car. It had a single older man in it. Then the next thing was Don's red car that was all crushed and smashed. So we were only 4 vehicles on the bridge at that point.
I was stationed in Walker County at the time. I said, how does it look for him? And they said, not good at all. That was, just something I never forgot. I mean, was seeing that. It was a miserable, miserable day.
Traffic is backed up for miles in both directions, because at that time, it was the only bridge across that lake. In fact, Dick Onerrecker and Anita had to leave their car and walk up on the bridge to get to where the accident was.
Police approached Dick first and said, don't even bother with that man. I've already checked him and he has no pulse. And then Dick did check, and he could not identify any pulse.
You could see from this wrecking yard picture that the trajectory of the truck as it went over. When the truck hit me, it literally took this arm over my shoulder into the back seat. The steering wheel actually went horizontal and into my chest. My head had banged up against the metal side of the interior of the car. My right leg was broken at the knee. But I must have slid in the seat a little sideways because it hit from that angle. And when it did, it literally severed my left leg just above the knee. And 4.5 inches of the femur was ejected from the car and actually never found. I had been killed instantly. My heart was not beating, so it was not pumping blood. I died on the bridge.
I'm a board-certified orthopedic spine surgeon, and physicians spend their entire career evading death. We believe that if we are smart enough, if we are well-trained enough, and if we do a good enough job, that we can control the outcomes, that we can control the variables, and we can cheat death. My husband and I were avid kayakers. Kayaking is both challenging and exhilarating. We began to go down the river. We went over the first couple of drops. It was very high flow, very high current, strong current. There was another client that sort of bobbled her way past me and ended up sideways at the entrance to the chute. So my only option was to veer over and go over the main part of the waterfall. And the front end of my boat became pinned. And the boat and I were then completely submerged under 8 to 10 feet of water. I recognized that I was probably going to drown. I would think about the fact that I must be dead, but I didn't feel dead. I felt more alive than I've ever felt. I felt this incredible experience, like I was just part of the water. I felt magnificent, actually. I knew that I was being held by Christ as purely as I know anything. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just something that is outside of our language.
We went up a world-famous climb, maybe 500 feet, 3 pitches up.
As the train started pulling out, I just thought, this is it, I'm gonna die.
Took a corner doing 90 miles an hour, flipped over, and then landed on his top. All I remember seeing was a big white light.
The knife had gone all the way through my liver. I had a punctured lung, and I started feeling myself leave my body.
You were in the hospital bed,
right?
But you had left your body, and your body was on the bed.
Mm-hmm.
My spirit was.
And I could see in every direction at once.
Up on the ceiling, looking down, there was this feeling of a presence. It felt like
it's not like this kind of like guy up in the sky.
And that was God. I just knew it was
the meaning of life, of everything.
It was unlike anything that I've ever experienced.
I have no fear of death.
There's, it's with total knowledge and unconditional
love. It was all the love that is in the universe.
That is not the end. It's probably the beginning.
I looked into his eyes. It was like I was looking at forever inside, and I could see the love he had for me.
People don't believe you when you say the story, but it's just so real.
Almost 30 minutes had gone by. Enough time had passed that they had shifted from a rescue mode to purely a body recovery mode. I could see this bloated purple body, and I never felt alive and then dead. I never felt conscious and then unconscious. I felt conscious and then more conscious. I felt alive and then more alive.
I came into this thing skeptical. I mean, I could have very easily blown this whole thing off. If you go through resuscitation for 20 minutes and you've been without oxygen for 20 minutes or whatever, you're going to lose some neurons. You're going to have brain damage. You may not live either. You'll die a neurologic death. General rule is the longer you're without the oxygen, normally, the more brain damage you're going to have, and it's progressive until it's restored.
A new study may provide answers to the age-old question, what happens to our brains when we die?
The brain has always been the most fascinating and the most interesting organ to me because to the world it is completely unexplored. I was working in Vancouver at the Vancouver General Hospital. This was an 87-year-old gentleman. He came during the emergency shift with a bleed between the brain and the skull. We call it a subdural hematoma. And we decided to operate. We removed the skull, we removed the bleeding. He did fairly well after the surgery for about 3 days, and then he started having seizures. So we went and applied an EEG to say where the seizures are coming from and how to treat them. Once we had this applied, he had a heart attack and died. So that left us with the rare recording of the human brain that went from alive to death.
It's the first ever recording of a dying human brain, one that happened entirely by chance.
We've heard about people before who have faced near-death experiences describe this moment where the important moments in their life flash before their head. Is that what we're talking about? Is that what this is?
From what this case of one tells us, all the things that are consistently being described by people who undergo near-death experience, these guys have exhibited these brain waves that exactly the same ones we're measuring when we record the activity of this patient 30 seconds before the heart stops beating and 30 seconds after the heart stops beating. That we found was quite astonishing.
After searching and searching, we had not found anybody at the time when we wrote the manuscript and submitted it that had full brain recordings from the dying human brain under acute clinical environments. Brain waves are always present in our brain. They differ in frequency, meaning how many times per second they oscillate. The high frequency waves are called gamma waves. Then the lower ones, we call them beta, theta, alpha, and delta waves. Those are slower frequent oscillations. We found an increased interplay of these oscillatory bands with each other. We looked at how does, for example, theta waves that are known for memory recall, how do they couple with gamma waves? And we found an increased coupling of the two after the heart stopped beating. The brain is a prediction machine that is designed for survival. So we see something, we interpret the signal, we generate a response. In all kinds of responses that the brain generates, the only one we can measure right now is movement. We can't measure what we call thinking. Can you measure emotions, feelings? I don't know what to answer you. We can't measure all these things. We know that the brain somehow does these things. We may never understand what exactly happens, and maybe that's not the most important thing either. If the science can contribute even a minute percentage and can shed light on the nature of the human brain dying, if I could go to my patients and I could tell them, it may be that your loved one is replaying some of the nicest memories of their life, it somehow makes things easier it tells them they're not suffering. That, I think, would help patients in that tremendously difficult time.
Growing up in South Korea, I grew up in a Buddhist home. Ever since the age of 6, 7, I was asking questions like, why are humans made? Why are we born? What is the purpose of mankind? Why am I here? The Buddhist monks at the temple would say things like, oh yeah, Steve, you can go to heaven, you can go to hell, come back. You can get reincarnated into an animal or a different species. They taught you how to do right and do wrong and try to earn your salvation. My mother, who was trained as a registered nurse, she got recruited by a VA Veterans Hospital in Boston. You know, she prepared the way for us to come, so I came with my younger brother in elementary school. The older I got, middle school and even up to freshman year, I remember feeling a lot of confusion. I remember looking in the mirror and saying, how come I'm the only one? How come I have to be Korean? And it was a big struggle, and it led me to become a little rebellious. Like, I joined the garage band. I tried a little harder than others to try to fit in. I just remember, you know, always feeling a little empty, feeling confusion and emptiness, you know, from high school. I remember in the summer of 1998, we would get high in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. The whole summer, I don't remember being sober for an hour. And my mom and brother were getting super worried. I called the Buddhist temple for help. They didn't help either. So I realized, like, this is something that is beyond my power, ability to save myself from. You know, people say when they see demons or evil spirits, they might think somebody comes with a pitchfork and horns, but I had an open-eye vision of an old Asian grandpa coming. Like, he's talking to me like I'm talking to you. He said, hey, Steve, I know you're having a hard time. If you commit suicide and take your own life, then I can give you 50,000 less years of hell. And I'm like, that's a great deal. I went to the kitchen. I grabbed the biggest knife I could find, got on my knees. So I grabbed the knife and I cut my neck open here, which, you know, was very painful. My mom sees the event happening, so she calls 911. The cops came, and then the grandpa spirit still there speaking to me, says, Steve, you gotta hurry up, you're gonna miss your chance. Go for the stomach. So I cut my stomach open, which actually is, you know, the scars go down all the way here. I lost a big part of my blood. The cops came and whacked me with a bat. I dropped the knife. I remember losing consciousness. The whole living room was bloody red. My mom was crying. I remember hearing her. They put me on the stretcher because already I'm very damaged. I'm losing blood like at a very fast rate. And I'm going in and out of consciousness now. The grandpa spirit's gone. And then it was just into the unknown after that. I remember coming out, seeing my body, and then seeing the ER room. I remember going through just darkness, like even seeing rocks and stones around me, just falling. It just felt like I was falling in an elevator. And I don't know how to put it into words exactly, but I knew I was going to a different place that was still real, more real than anything here on earth. I was still fully conscious, everything's happening, but now it's like there's a different set of rules, there's a different set of awarenesses, and you're saying goodbye to earth. I knew I was saying goodbye to earth and going to another place of eternity. And then God came to me in like a ball of light that became like a triangle. Behind it, I saw the city. I looked up and it was glittering like gold. The walls were gold. I don't know how it works, but it's definitely a place we go. I heard a voice before I woke up. I love you. And I opened my eyes and I'm in the emergency room. I was like, I'm alive. So first of all, I was so thankful I was alive. I look around, my mom's there. She's crying, grabbing my hand. Son, you know, you regain consciousness. And I was still trying to process what happened, but I just knew I was back on earth. They said they took 2 surgeries to cover the blood vessels that were cut. A specialist had to fly in at the last minute, and if he was late, they told me I would have been bye-bye forever. My heart and blood rate wouldn't go back up. It just kept sinking, sinking, sinking during the whole surgery. And they said it was a miracle. Good timing. I know one thing. We all live once and die once. And there is judgment after.
I think that there are a lot of people that do take advantage of this novelty and the fascination of this experience. We're all going to die, and we all want to know what's going to happen once that happens. So, I mean, this is speaking to us all and of great importance. That can be abused. Some of these cases are transmitted through several different people before they get in print. And they get a lot of attention because they're fantastic. But what I've tried to do is remove some of the subjectivity to these experiences and put data out there that's been scientifically, rigorously collected. There's no way you can verify the transcendental part of the experience. The person feels like they go to an otherworldly environment as opposed to their environment right there in the room with them.
What really convinced me, and what convinced many skeptical doctors, oncologists, cardiologists, is that when people initially leave their body, they say that many times they were in the room still where they were being resuscitated or worked on, many times up near the ceiling, looking down, watching. They felt incredible peace, even though it was chaotic, oftentimes in the room where they were working on their body. When they would come back, they were able to give corroborative evidence that they actually saw what was going on in the room, even though they were unconscious at the time they were being worked on. They shouldn't have been able to see this.
Autoscopic means self-visualization. They were visualizing themselves from the ceiling, lying in bed, lifeless, or being resuscitated. That is the verifiable part of a near-death experience, where you can go back and either verify what they said they saw to what actually occurred, and that's what I wanted. That was the main thing that got me hooked on this thing. And I paid very little attention to the tunnel, the light, the deceased relatives and friends, the religious figures. For me, as a cardiologist, scientist, and a physician, I wanted some verification. I wanted some medical records. I wanted to talk to people who had been there and seen what had happened in the room.
Back in the early 1990s, when I was a resident training in neurosurgery at Phoenix and at the Barrow Neurological Institute, one of the best places to go in the world. It was a destination center for neurosurgery. I was on the chairman's service, Dr. Robert Spetzler. And Dr. Spetzler is world-renowned. There was a patient who came to him named Pamela Reynolds.
What we're looking at is the aneurysm that she had, which is at the very base of the brain. This is the balloon that can burst and cause this incredible catastrophe. It's all the way at the very base of the brain. And that is why it's so incredibly difficult to get there.
The anatomical location of the basal artery is a neurosurgeon's no man's land. She underwent an operation, again, a pretty unusual operation called cardiac standstill. I came in several times into the operating room because it's a cardiac standstill case, and they're fascinating.
If you were going to do a laboratory experiment, this is the perfect experiment. She was put on the operating room table and immediately put under general anesthesia.
A cardiac standstill operation requires teams of medical providers, surgical providers, all of which is designed to, 1, drop the temperature of a person's body, 2, drain out all the blood out of their body, 3, keep them in a state of suspended animation, shut down brain function, and you've actually stopped the heart.
They had these things in her ears that emitted 95 to 100 decibel clicks. If the click went off and you saw a spike on the EEG that was measuring the brainstem, then you knew the brainstem was active.
No heart that's beating, a brain that's no longer functioning,
And what they had to do is get it so that those clicks were eliciting no brainstem reactivity, i.e. it was flatline. So she was pretty much totally isolated from the environment physically, and medically she was in a, that's why they call the procedure standstill. Everything was at a standstill.
She would be clinically dead for a whole hour of the operation.
She had a three-part near-death experience. The first part was the out-of-body or autoscopic part when Spetzler first started up the brain saw. She heard the conversation between Spetzler and the surgeon about the artery being too small in her right femoral artery, and they had to switch over to the left. The visual part, she saw the bone saw, which I didn't even know what it looked like myself as a cardiologist.
And I was then looking down at the body. I knew it was my body, but I didn't care. My vantage point was sort of sitting on the doctor's shoulder. I remember the instrument in his hand. It looked like the handle of my electric toothbrush.
And then she said that there was this tray of instruments to the right of Spetzler that it looked like the socket wrench set that her father used to have. And then the other stuff was the same autoscopic. And in between those two experiences, which she relates the experience as a continuous experience, she had the transcendental experience.
I felt a presence. I sort of turned around to look at that pinpoint of light.
Well, how do you know the transcendental experience happened when the blood was drained out of her head? Well, you don't. All you can do is infer it. You can't prove it. The other two are time anchored. The middle is not.
Pam came back, I believe the following day. As with every patient, I'm rounding on her in the intensive care unit before the chairman's rounds, and she was awake talking with me. I usually ask these typical questions. How are you feeling after the tube was removed from her by extubation and she was able to control her airway and she was becoming more lucid? Well, she had a lot to talk about. She began to describe some details about her operation. And as she spoke, I became spooked. She talked about her blood vessels in her groin being cannulated and being too small. She talked about her heart being shocked twice, giving me details that she just shouldn't know. I sort of put the kibosh on the conversation. Pam, you need to get some rest. I'll come back later. I went to my chairman and told Dr. Spetzler, you need to talk with Pam Reynolds. She's describing stuff that she just shouldn't know. This ain't right. Functionally speaking, Pam was dead.
Typically, when people are coming out of a dream in the morning, they feel like they're coming back to reality. But people who have a near-death experience say that as they go into that experience, it's this life that becomes dreamlike. People feel that when they, from the world's point of view, are dying, they actually are waking up to a reality that this state of existence that we're in now seems like a dream or as though you're asleep.
I think the near-death experience is where science meets religion. There is a big difference between proof and evidence. This is all evidence, but enough evidence at some point makes it so close to proof that most people would say, it's right, it's real. I gotta watch what I say because I don't wanna unnecessarily alienate people. I think skepticism is good. True skepticism, but rigidity is not. In other words, if you have an ideological opposition to something and you fight tooth and nail to support it or at least advocate it, and refuse to look at the other side, that's not being objective.
There's a lot about the afterlife that we don't know for sure. We'll all know for real only after we die, and not completely before then.
There have been lots of alternate theories. Fighter-pilot syndrome. You're pulling G's, it feels like you're going through a tunnel. Some say psychedelic drugs like a DMT or LSD or mescaline. Vibrant colors and maybe going to another place.
You name it, DMT, ketamine, LSD, those are generally illicit substances that produce hallucinatory effects. And in fact, many people that take these illicit substances, and the difference between the experience they have and the typical near-death experience is very striking.
The problem is that all of those might describe one aspect. You have people, and we're talking thousands and thousands of people, all around the globe, old, young, sighted people, blind people, and they're saying the same thing. So on the other side, blind people can see. They have to adjust to it, to describing things that they see. But they see the same things. And there was one study done with 23 blind people, 14 of them blind from birth. 2 of them that I report about describe the light coming out of everything.
There's the near-death experience of Marta. She was a 5-year-old girl and totally blind. Marta went into a lake and drowned, and her consciousness rose above her body. She described vividly details of birds' feathers, birds' eyes, details on telephone poles. It's remarkable to me how someone totally blind can be fascinated by mundane things that you and I would not consider to be so exciting. Seeing this for the first time while she's unconscious and below the surface of the water, and yet having a near-death experience.
So how do you get a lucid experience that happens both for people who have had hallucinogenic drugs potentially in the hospital or, anesthesia, but they're saying the same things as those who have had no anesthesia, and the same things that little kids say, the same things that people from different religious backgrounds and cultures say. You don't have mass hallucinations.
The moment the truck struck me, I was standing at the gates of heaven. And it was magnificent. It was like the inside of an oyster. It was pearl and dazzling, almost like it was living. It just looked that way because of the light reflecting off the gate. Heaven is light. God is light. It's astounding. One of the most difficult things about talking about heaven is that you have to do it with earthly words. And there are no earthly words that do it justice. I did think for a moment, okay, I died. Okay, I'm gone. And was I sad? No, not at all. I wasn't worried about my mom or dad or what they would think or nothing. I was only looking forward to where I was going, and it was nothing but joy and peace and love and unity. I was surrounded by people I knew and loved in life. The first person I saw was my grandfather. I was very close to my grandfather. Last time I saw him, he was in a casket. At his funeral, he did not look good. Now I'm standing at the gates of heaven, and there he is to greet me. And he looked really good. He extended his hands to me and spoke a language I've never heard before, but fully understood, and said, "Welcome home, Donnie." I recognize this group of people. These people are looking at me with such love. They're all seemingly at the prime of their life. And these people were greeting me, and they were so delighted that I was there.
And I knew that they were there for me, to welcome me, to greet me, to love me, to make me feel known. And I knew that they had known and loved me as long as I've existed.
The music was phenomenal. Thousands of songs at the same time without chaos. All manner of music, instrumental, choruses. Astoundingly, they just invade you. I mean, you're permeated by the music. My senses were incredibly vivid, touch and taste and feel and hearing. It was just all, it's just the most real thing that's ever happened to me. After I greeted the people, they parted, and I could see through the gate. There was a long boulevard that really bisects the city, and it appears to be constructed of gold. So many of the things that we experience here are there, but much infinitely more glorious and perfect. I wanted to climb that hill and fall at the feet of the great God of all creation and say, thank you for letting me come. That was my objective.
Not every near-death experience is a good one. 23% of those who come forward talking about them talk about how they had hellish experiences.
At that time, I felt really empty. It just seemed like the best thing to do was just to die at that point. If I die, then it's game over. And if I die, then the pain and the suffering, the depression, the darkness, all this is gonna stop. Well, if I do enough cocaine, then maybe my heart will stop beating because it feels like it's racing out of my chest. And I didn't see a bright light. I saw a black tunnel. It felt like somebody grabbed me and dropped me in this outer darkness. As I started racing down this tunnel that seemed like infinity, it was like a bottomless pit. I don't know how, but I was no longer high. All my senses were at 1,000. I knew that I had died, and it was one of the scariest moments in my entire life. And I'm racing down this tunnel that seems like forever, like 1,000 miles an hour as I'm just free falling. If I'm going to hell, there's gotta be a mistake because I never killed anybody, I didn't rob a bank. I mean, I'm a good person. I'm not a bad guy. The only person I hurt was myself. When I began to justify how good I was, it went faster, like 2,000 miles an hour. It speeded up the process, like now you're really going to hell. I remember at that point, I cried out with all desperation. I said, God, you need to come help me right now because I need you. If you really exist, I need your help. So you gotta come down. Please, God, I need your help.
In the bed that I had been in was this big slab of meat. And when I looked at the face, it bore an amazing resemblance to me. And I could not understand how that could resemble me, but I was perfectly well standing there, perfectly alive, looking at this hunk of meat. The other thing that bothered me was that my wife would not respond to me. Well, at first I started talking in a nice voice and I started yelling at her like, look at me, talk to me, I'm all better. What's that thing in the bed? How did it get there? I was very upset, very distressed. And then I heard people out in the hallway outside the well-lit room in the darkish gray, hazy hallway. And there was a group of people standing outside the light of the room in the hallway. I said, I'm sick, I need a doctor. And they said, we know all about you. It's time for you to come with us. So I thought that they were hospital personnel to take me to a doctor. When I left the room and went into the hall, I can't explain how I knew I couldn't go back into the room. The door didn't close, but I knew that it was impossible for me to go back into the light of the room. So I hesitated, and the people became very insistent. Hurry up, let's go, let's go. We can't wait anymore. You know, we've been here a long time waiting for you. Hurry up. So I gave in and went with them, and they immediately surrounded me and moved me forward into that grayness. As we moved along, I could not perceive walls, ceiling, any feature at all. And we walked and walked and walked. And after a while, it's like, okay, this hospital's not that big, you know. I mean, we've walked miles now, and it's like, where's the stairs? Where's the, you know, where's the up and down? Where's the walls? And there was nothing. We just walked and walked. So I was asking the people around me, like, this isn't the hospital, this isn't right, you know, where are we, stuff like that. And their response was, shut up, be quiet, keep moving, move, move, move! They'd say, you're gonna find out, you'll find out, you're gonna get there. There was a lot of people around us, possibly hundreds, I don't know. They were being very vulgar, very threatening, very scary. I'm in abject darkness. I have absolutely no idea which way, forward, backward. I mean, all I knew is I wanted to get away from them. They said, no, you've got further to go, and they started to push and shove me. And I fought back. They began by punching, shoving, kicking, and then they started biting, scratching, and tearing me apart, literally. Disemboweling me, gouging my eyes. And it was accompanied with a great deal of laughter and joy. I thought about my whole life, and everything seemed like, what was the point? And I realized that my relationships with my mother and father were a disaster. My relationship with my sisters wasn't good. My relationship with my wife was very troubled. I was not proud or pleased with my relationship with my two children. I sank into a pit of despair and hopelessness that I can't begin to describe. My mind offered up a memory of myself as a little boy going to a Sunday school singing Jesus Loves Me. When I was a little boy and I was afraid, like having nightmares at night or whatever, I would pray to him and he would chase the lions and tigers, the bears away. And as a child, it was like mostly in the image of like a superhero. Jesus was like a superhero. And so that's it. That was all I knew. So I called out to him. In complete desperation, a tiny little star appeared in the sky. And very rapidly, it got brighter and brighter and brighter.
I started moving helplessly without direction. I had nothing to do with this. I started moving out of the room. I next realized that I have left the hospital and now I'm traveling almost like a rocket ship, just moving out of this atmosphere. As if in deep space.
I all of a sudden realized we were not on the ground anymore. We were moving upward, straight upwards. So I've got my face buried in his chest, hanging on to him. I'm like, I don't want him to let me go because I'm afraid if I let go, or if he lets go, I'm going to fall back into that horrible place again.
And there was a beam of light was lighting the pathway of where I was going.
My whole life flashed in front of me, as big as the sky.
Tiny spheres of light. They weren't planets, they weren't stars. These were beings going to Earth.
Where we were going was what I first thought was a galaxy, huge world of light.
The light that I'm looking at is coming from none other than God himself. Inside the light was life. And inside that light was love. And my body is still on Earth. My brain and eyeballs are back there. And I'm sensing and discerning all of these things.
When you leave this earth and you step into the eternity, everything is crystal clear.
I knew I was coming to this holy area, and obviously it took another second to connect the dots. This is heaven.
And he spoke to me for the first time in his voice, but it was telepathic, but it wasn't a thought of mine. It was his voice in my head. And then he said, I've got some people that I want you to meet. They've recorded your life, and they want to show you your life. So they proceeded to show me my life in chronological order. What I saw, to summarize it, was happy youth, pretty much, then going to adolescence, everything going sour, particularly with my relationship with my father. Because of my father's cruelty to me, I was cruel back. My father was physically and emotionally abusive every day to my mother, my sisters, and to me. I mean, it never stopped. The only way that I could deal with it was to try and not feel anything. And all he wanted from me was to be a little duplicate of him, you know, just be subservient to him. You know, being disobedient had immediate physical consequences of being kicked or punched or hit. And I saw myself striving to become emotionless and feelingless, which was a way for me to protect myself from being hurt. As I became more manipulative and successful, the more the angels and Jesus expressed their disappointment and sadness with me and my life. And it really hurt to disappoint them, because here I have these newfound friends, my big rescuer, you know, best friend I ever had. And I'm looking at my life and I'm a big, huge disappointment.
And he should put me back. I don't belong here.
You know, you've made a mistake. I don't belong here. And he said, we don't make mistakes. You do belong here.
At this point, I'd had a number of operations and was finally able to be upright instead of wheelchair bound. But I wasn't able to walk very well. When I was sent back to my body, I knew that sharing my experiences with other people was part of the deal. I knew that part of that was writing about them. And so I woke up and I spent the next week or so getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning and writing for a few hours before the morning routine. And so I, made my final revisions, and when I hit the save button, I took my youngest son, who was still living at home, into town to get ice cream so we could celebrate. And so as we were driving into town to celebrate, I called my older boys because my oldest son and his brother were at the time living in Maine. They were ski training. And I called them to share this great news. And the coach answered the phone and told me that Willie had just been hit by a car and killed. I reacted like any mother would. The depth of my spiritual knowledge does not protect me from grief. It doesn't protect me from sorrow or any of those things. The depth of pain of losing a child is, I don't think, a pain that can be replicated by any other human experience. I was devastated.
And it all stopped just as quickly as I had arrived. That accident happened at 11:45 in the morning. I arrived at Herman Memorial Hospital at like 6:15 that night. So they went and got my wife out of her classroom, brought her down to the office and told her the news.
I walked down the hall and into the office, and our assistant principal came out from around her desk and just wrapped me in this hug. And she says, "Don's been in an accident." And that's all we knew.
I was taken into surgery that evening and was in surgery for 12 hours. The next day was when I realized I was in the recovery room.
The emergency room had called, and the nurse said, "He can't hold the phone, but I'm going to put it next to his ear so he can hear you." And I started with the questions, "Are you okay? What happened? Do I need to come up there?" Just, rambling sort of things. And all I could hear him say was, "I just want to go home. I just want to go home." Later, I understood that he meant his heavenly home.
Had I had a choice, I would not have come back here. I've had 30 wonderful years here, but I would still rather be there. I know what happens next, and it's always better there than it will ever be here. So I did really want to come back, but I didn't get a choice.
He went into a deep depression. And I would go in, and he would just lay there. He wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't acknowledge me. I would bring papers to grade. I would sit over in the corner and grade and stay there till about 11 o'clock almost every night. And then I'd tell him good night and I'd leave. And it was hurtful because I thought, you're alive. You're alive, you're back with us. Don't you love us enough to be glad to be back with us? And To me, that was harder to deal with. The depression was harder to deal with than the physical injuries, which were massive. And I remember one night, I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go home early tonight, and I'm gonna take a warm shower, and I'm gonna crawl in the bed and get a good night's sleep. So I gathered up all my stuff, and I just said, well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow. No response. That night, something clicked inside of me, and I had it. And I dropped that book bag, and I stomped my way over to the side of the bed, and I let him have it. What is wrong with you? Why aren't you glad to see us? Why aren't you glad that you're back with us? It just tumbled out. And so I grabbed my stuff up, and I'm walking out the door, and there was a big mirror next to his bed. And I looked over there, and he was crying. Just tears. So I walked myself back over, and I kind of had to, we had so many metal things that I kind of got my way in, and I just wrapped him in my arms. And I said, it's gonna be okay. And I realized then that I had to accept that sometimes he was going through things I didn't understand.
Finally, when we got through it, Jesus said, do you have any questions? And I said, I got a million questions. He said, what do you want to know? So I asked him everything that I could think of to know. And if we went through that, it would take us several years. And he gave me a whole new understanding of everything. I said, great. Now that I understand, I want to go to heaven. He said, I'm not ready for heaven yet. Finally, I said, what do you want me to do? I want you to love the person that you're with. I said, okay, yeah, but then what do you want me to do after I do that? And he said, no, that's what I want you to do. And I said, what good's that gonna do? And he said, it's gonna change the world. And I said, that's gonna change the world? I don't think so. No, I said, you don't understand. The world is like a terrible, cruel place. Even if I love someone, they're just gonna go get beat up somewhere else, and they're not gonna. And he said, no, if you love someone, they'll take that love out into the world, and maybe they'll love somebody, and it'll grow and grow and grow. I said, it's not gonna work. And he said, it's God's plan. It's gonna work. Well, when he pulls out the God's plan work, I mean, it's like, what can you say? And so finally I conceded. And I said, okay, I'll go back. And with that, bang, I'm in the body, I'm in the bed. The nurse who'd been in the room comes in and says, a doctor has arrived at the hospital and we're going to prepare you for surgery. When I awoke, I knew that what had happened to me was the most important thing in my life. Because now my life had real meaning and purpose. I was very, very weak. I'd been in surgery for hours. I'd spent most of the morning trying to think of how I was going to tell my wife what had happened. I said to her, it's all love. She said, I love you. And I said, I know you love me, but it's all love. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, it's an ocean of love. And you have to just go into that ocean of love and be a part of it. And she said,
okay, Annie. Try to get some rest.
Here I am. I'm giving her the abbreviated wisdom of God. And she's basically telling me, you're making no sense. It's crazy talk. From that day forward, I tried to tell people about God, heaven, hell, what I'd experienced, and nobody took me seriously at all. I was a zealot. I was a complete zealot. And it was not good for my relationship with me, because the more that they did not respect what I was trying to tell them, and the more they told me I was nuts and crazy and stuff like that, the more it totally alienated them from the Bible, from God, from me. I mean, it was completely counterproductive. It was a disaster. My wife left me. She poisoned the kids against me. They've rejected me. They don't want anything to do with me. They think I'm a crazy man. It's all gonna work out. I know that God works stuff out. It just doesn't happen on our time frame. I mean, I'd like it now, and it's not happening right now, but it could happen tomorrow. It might take a long time. I don't know.
A couple of years down the road, when I found out about the heaven experience, people have asked me, aren't you mad that he didn't tell you? And I'm going, not really. I was relieved, because now I understand. You know, if you've been to heaven, why would you want to be back in the pain that he was in?
I found myself on a daily basis with all these devices attached to me and unable to move at all. I couldn't do a single solitary thing for myself at all. 38 and then 39-year-old man who was completely helpless. Why? You let me see that, and you brought me back to this. What is going on here? What's the purpose of this?
In my studies of psychiatry, I quickly realized that practically everybody is chasing something. Some chase fame or money or power. But what I quickly realized in talking with people who had near-death experiences is that whatever they were chasing before, this experience convinced them that what life is all about is learning to love.
And they all come back all around the globe with the same aha, that God is love, and that how we treat and love one another is what matters most to God. You have people who have these experiences and come back and their life is radically changed.
When I came back, one of the things I knew, I wanted to make friends with my dad. Not only was I able to forgive my father because I understood that he was just messed up because of his messed up childhood. All my father really wanted to do was to be loved, but he didn't know how to do that in appropriate ways, so he tried to be loved in inappropriate ways. He thought obedience and discipline. And my mother and my sisters were really angry with me because they all told me several times, you and Dad hated each other, and now you're his best friend. Why? And I'd say, because he's my dad. Grace is passed along and passed along and passed along, and it's powerful. It's powerful because people change their lives for the good. They find hope, peace, love, joy, contentment, you know. And they also find God and eternal life.
When I was being shown the ripple effect of my own actions and my own words, I was able to see this 20, 25, 35 times removed from me. That's a big distance. I understood all the hurts and sorrows and dreams, everything that had brought me to that point in time when I may have hurt someone else. I also had this complete understanding of the backstory or the life story of the other people involved, and everything that had brought them to that moment in time where they hurt me or they hurt someone I love. What we each say and what we each do and the choices we make matter. They really do. When I talk about my son's death, I know that he went home. And I'm sure that he didn't want to come back either. I'm sure he was reassured that we would be fine. When my time on earth is done, my oldest son will be there to greet me. My father, my stepfather. I now know other people who have died, people who I love, people who are important in my life. I don't see us here on earth and God's world is over here. I think we exist in the midst of it. I had the most overwhelming sense of being home, of being where I really belong, where we really belong, all of us.
It took about a few months to recover fully. I was still feeling the pain, feeling a little down, depressed. Seeing hell and heaven changed me to kind of prioritize others. So at the age of 35, I joined the Army Reserves. I became a chaplain. People who just came back from war, and you could tell that they had a very heartbroken experience or psychological damage, the atrocities of war. So we did a lot of counseling. We would pick up phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning, go with them to training, hang out with them. I would tell them that there's hope. I would tell them that depression is not forever. I believe all over the world there are so many unique NDEs and near-death experiences in so many cultures and backgrounds, American or not, all types of religions, because death is as real as life. And I believe God in His mercy, no matter what religious background you are, allows you to go through that so that you can seek Him in the process.
I don't know why some people survive and some people don't. I wish I wouldn't have survived. I've had some very real things happen to me on earth, the birth of 5 grandchildren, seeing my children all graduate. I mean, it's been glorious in many ways, but nothing compares to heaven. It's just, that's the most real thing. That is my reality. This is not.
What do we have more in common as humanity than death? And to know that there's hope beyond this life, that there truly is beauty and relationship and love and adventure ahead. You know, that all of our history and our memories, they don't end and we don't become something else. It goes on.
People ought to keep an open mind to what's going on, not accept everything they hear from people, from me, from anybody. Be skeptical. Ask questions. Think about it. There are things that we can't explain, and I think it needs to be documented as much as we can. Documentation is important. Without that, it's an interesting story, and that's it. We can only do so much. You know, we're human beings, and we do the best we can. I think most people really do. We don't have all the answers, and I don't think we ever will have all the answers in the scientific realm. What is the human soul? Is there a human soul? Does it live after death? I don't think science is going to answer those questions. I think all of these near-death experiences suggest that that's possible.
When you had the cardiac arrest, you think you were hallucinating me?
No, sir. I surely was. That was real. I've lived with this thing a good while now, 3 years, and I haven't told anybody because I don't want to put the straitjacket on me. But you seem like a reasonable fellow. It's real as hell.